All right. So are you, Adam, I can kind of go through the questions. I sent the questions at a time. I do have Sarah. I don't know if I mentioned this. I have Sarah and Susan's responses as well. So I will chime in with those. And we've got another member of the team there.
Awesome.
Who wants to join in? One of the first questions we had was, what would you say is our main focus or goal for outreach for Trinity? And if you want to go and lead this part, Adam, with your questions, go ahead.
Well, I don't necessarily want to answer any of the questions or anything like that, but I do want to just give a quick preface that,
okay. Yep.
You know, the reason that we're having a conversation like this is so that as much as we can be, as we go forward, we can be aligned with each other, so that when we are kind of cruising out on all cylinders, all of our ministry areas are aligned with at least somewhat of a common purpose. And, you know, we have our mission statement at Trinity, and you all have done a lot of work with developing what Trinity is about. But the more conversations I have like this that help to define and clarify what we're about, and then specifically what these separate teams are about, helps me to understand where we're going and what we need to think about. And so and I think that this team, this particular area of ministry is going to be vitally important going forward. That's not to say it wasn't vitally important, but I think our church going into the years ahead, Big C Church and Trinity Church going into the years ahead, will have to have a specific focus on being outward looking. And so it's going to be really important moving forward to really define what we're about and what we'd like to be about, and the things that we'd like to see, because this area of ministry, not raising it up to levels of importance more than anything else, but like this outward facing piece of us is going to be really important, so that we can join with other people in the community, in the larger world, in what it means to be living out the gospel. So that's where this is coming from. I always want to preface and make sure I'm not questioning the motives of the outreach team. I'm not saying that things need to die or things need to live. I'm asking the question because I'm new, and I get to ask questions like these that I maybe wouldn't get to ask if I was 5 years into this. So that's where they're coming from, so that you can tell me a little bit about your story and where you think this team, but also the whole of the church is headed. So there you go.
Okay. And then some of our questions, and you've had conversations with maybe to say with a little bit of an update with We Are Here Now. You met with the teams, you had cottage meetings, you've met with some local, maybe to share a little bit about that, of the learnings. You've met with the local superintendent, Kevin Ward with IOCP. I don't know if you want to share anything about that, and just kind of if there's anything that has trickled up to the top, or
well, so in conversations with Jill, I've expressed what I think would be a good thing for us to think about based on the feedback that I've heard. None of this is just my own thinking. It's coming from conversations I've had with cottage meetings. Of course, I had 11 of those when I started. I just got done with 2 Zoom calls about the We Are Here Now, kind of getting that downloaded into my brain. I've met with staff. We've dreamed with as a staff many times over the last 4 months about what's happening. Jill's right. I have met with school leadership, superintendent, and some principals, and I can never remember his title, but well, Aaron Rulin, but then also somebody else. Anyway, met with people at Orono, and would like to meet some more community leaders, but time gets away from me. But the thing that I really think, if there's anything that's bubbling to the top, and again, this isn't saying that the rest of it isn't important also, but the thing that's bubbling to the top for me is a real chance to have an emphasis on what I've been calling the hyper local. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's neighborhood, that I think that we as at Trinity have so many resources to go to reach really far places, and those are really good things. And I want to make sure that the ones that everyone's passionate about, that we continue to champion and we continue to raise up as really important work. But the one thing that I'm hearing and feeling is a real opportunity to focus on what are the needs of this neighborhood, in this city, in this community, and how can we be people who are changing the lives of people right around us. It's a little bit different out in the suburbs and out in Orono than it is the neighborhood. Like if you're a neighborhood church in a neighborhood in Minneapolis, but it has we have the same kinds of opportunities to show up for our neighbors in some really profound ways. So that's what I've sort of felt rise to the top. Although, in all the conversations I have, I hear about all the wonderful things that you all are doing locally and globally. So that just to me is what continues to kind of be I wonder what's there.
Okay. So anyone have any questions, or we'll move on to first question, kind of to hear your thoughts on Adam had asked, what would you say would be the main focus or goal for outreach for Trinity? Anyone, you can raise your hand or chime in.
The way I'd answer that is very simplistic, that we are the hands and feet of God, both locally and globally. But because Adam, you have addressed an issue that's been with this committee since we started. And that is that we have been both local and we have been global. But correct me, fellow members, if I misstate this, but I think there has been some tension between those two. And that tension is sometimes healthy, and I think in the early stages, our emphasis it seemed like it was more global. As we have progressed through all of this, I have come to the belief, for myself at least, that the outreach in terms of what I see helping locally and globally is those two elements feed each other. I would be very concerned if all of our emphasis comes down to just the local, because what I've realized in my own life is how important the international and the global has been in terms of my growth, not only in terms of a person, but in terms of a faith. And to think that we have the capacity to help people in El Salvador. We have the capacity to help people in Long Lake, Minnesota. And to me, that balance between the two is really important, because I think one helps develop the other. And as I say, I use this word tension, and I'm going back to what's his name, Parker, the healthy tension, okay, between those two. And I think it's a good thing. What I also see coming out of our strategic plan from several years back, one of our goals was to engage more and more people within this community. And it seems to me that, and what I liked about what we've developed is a vehicle through which someone who has an interest, either local or global, can come to this committee. There's a process we go through, a forum in which we say, is this something that we can do? It seems to me that the initiatives that we take, if they are coming from within our own community, and Kirk, you are a wonderful example of canines. I mean, this is to me the way it should work. You have an interest, you brought this to our interest, it's something that we can support, you're willing to deal with it, you're willing to lead it. And I think that's one of the exciting things that's happened in this whole 5-year thing we've been in. And I think that if we are supporting and attending to, both locally and globally, programs that are important to our members, that's a bottom-up scenario, agenda. And I think that's really important. And we're not there yet. I'd like to see a lot more people involved, but that to me is what's exciting and significant about where we are, because I think we have some bottom up. We are both local, we are global. Our task is to get more people involved, I'll let it. In some ways, I'm really excited about where we are, and it's not to say that we don't have more things to do, but I like the balance. Okay.
Yeah, I'll chime in just because that's a good segue for me, Chuck, because if I had to use one word to describe our focus, I would say balanced. And I like that as well. I think we have some outreach focused on housing insecurity, some food insecurity, some education, and in addition to that, we have that balance between local and global, and local. Yeah, local can have a little different definition. How far is local? So and I like your term, Adam. I like the hyper local term, because I think we need probably some of that. I think we could use some of that. So I agree with Chuck. I think I like where we are, but not to say we need to rest on any laurels. I think we've agreed many times that one of our goals is to get more people drawn in. So that continues to be a goal.
And I can join in the conversation. I agree with what both Jerry and Chuck have shared. I think one of the strengths of Trinity is that we do get involved in a number of kinds of outreach, both local and global. I think they're always done in a really thoughtful, planful way. I agree with Chuck's comments that we went through a real discerning process and developed a process of how do you know what to say yes to and where to put your energy, and maybe what doesn't rise to the level of being sponsored by Trinity. And that took a lot of work. And I think that process, while I'm sure we'll continue to refine it, it does work. And I think you can see that the things that are taken on are done with real, they're just really well done. And of course, Jill is a big part of that. She just keeps us all on an organized path, but I think we've got a really strong team that looks very thoughtfully at both the local and the global opportunities. I would too say that when I first joined Trinity, it was probably primarily local focused, which again was a strong outreach. And one of the reasons that my family chose Trinity was we believed that they looked beyond their own members to be an example into the community. So we were we were drawn to that. I would say the global missions are a critical element because of two things. One, they really take all of us out of our little suburban bubble. When you go and see conditions like we've seen in different parts of the world, you have a whole new appreciation of your own living situation. You have a whole new appreciation of what is needed in the world, and your own faith changes. I would say people in a wealthier suburban area such as us can be convenient Christians. They'll be Christians when it's convenient, but they really don't need to rely on their faith most of the time. They have the financial means, they have the comfort that they can kind of, you know, it's a convenience in some ways. Once you see people who have to rely on their faith because they really have nothing else, it kind of puts me to shame, saying, oh my goodness, they have much more faith than I do and they have nothing. And it's because they've had to develop that faith, and I've been comfortable and I could kind of pay attention or not. So I think it makes a huge difference in the faith journey of our members. I've seen it for high school students when I've helped chaperone mission trips for students. It makes an entire difference in their perspective when they serve. And so I think it's critical we continue to have a strong, when COVID allows, mission opportunities for our teenagers. That kept a lot of kids at the high school, age participating with Trinity. So I hope that comes back. And I think it's critical for adults. I know everyone here has done that kind of travel and service and seen the faith of people who have nothing. And it's made us more committed to serve at home as well. So I do like our balance. I like our focus on being very discerning as we choose new avenues of service. But again, there's a lot more we can do. And having worked in the schools, I just recently retired after 30 years as the director of community education. So I'm very aware of the local needs. And I would say one of the greatest local needs right now is to develop a community that is more respectful, is more supportive, is less divisive, is more civil. And that has generally been the community over these last 30 years, but in the last couple years that has taken a big hit. And so we've had just some really nasty situations of how people have treated families of color in our community, how they've really beaten up the schools. And so being a voice of civility and coming together and caring and not being divisive would be an area that I think it's one of the more difficult areas, but it's critically needed. And it's one of the things that would help our families of color the most in our community, is to not be, not be yelled at in the grocery store and things that I've heard of from these kids that is just, it's appalling for Christians and for people in a community to behave that way. And I'd like us to be, our church, to be a beacon of civility and caring for all people. And so that's my thought of where our focus.
I'll jump in and add just a little bit to, I think it's kind of been summed up very well with what the others have said, but I think the engagement is a key thing for me. And I know Jill and I have had some conversations around how do you get people engaged? And so I think there's part of it is that balance and having programs that are supported by the committee that are both local and global, and multiple programs in those areas too. Not everyone is going to be excited about can-do canines. Not everyone's going to be excited about a food shelf. And so having some kind of a breadth of programs that are touching on different areas will probably, in my hope is that it will excite people who want to get involved. And I know that not everybody is going to get involved either. I think building relationships is so key in our programs also. And I know we've seen that through the work in El Salvador and that. And I know I've done, I think, 25 different international trips. And a lot of people have asked me personally, why don't you focus on one area? Why am I not going back to the same country over and over and building those relationships? Because there are people through Habitat, Thrive and Builds trips who have done that. They go back year over year to the same place. And I made a conscious decision early on to try to do the builds that I do to a different location each time, because I know that that will excite a certain group of people who want to continue to learn, want to grow through what, you know, Melanie talked about, through the international travel, through the learnings that you get from every culture, every place that you go to. And yet I believe, you know, personally, my passion is around the international, but I also have passions here locally also that I like to get involved with. And again, my goal is that we as a committee will offer up opportunities for members of Trinity that if they want to get involved, there will be something that will excite them. And one of the key things that, again, that I've been asked as a Thrive and Builds leader is, how do I know a build trip has been successful for the team members? And not looking at for the recipients of the house or that, I think that's very obvious, but for the team members. And for me, the excitement is if a team member comes back and wants to become a team leader and wants to grow that way and expand their involvement, really. And that's my hope, is that through the work that this committee does and the offerings that we have, that we can build leaders through our church congregation that will be involved in a lot of different kinds of programs that they're passionate about.
Okay. Susie, do you have anything you'd want to? I mean, everyone doesn't have to answer every question. It's up to individuals.
Yeah, no, I don't have really anything to add to that. That was all really spot on. Pretty much the culture of our committee, our values, how we make decisions. We're dedicated to both local and global. I would be fascinated to know more about, I've never heard of the word hyper-local before, so I would be fascinated to know what Pastor Adam found out our local needs are, because we always take that approach when we go globally. We always find out, what do the people want first, right? We've read many books about this, and you know, we find out what people want first, and then we plan in, you know, an action. So I'd be really curious to know what our community needs. And Melanie, thank you so much for bringing up some of those issues that you've heard about. Myself personally, I'm not involved in the kinds of circles or the conversations about what we need locally. And I'm assuming locally means, there's a lot of definitions of local. Are we speaking, Minneapolis? Are we talking Long Lake? Are we talking Orono? I think we also, as we move forward, need to define local, because local can mean a lot of things. We talk, any sort of crisis in any part of the country, is that considered local? I'd like to define local a little better, and then also hash out what everybody has found out about what we need locally as well. I mean, local, where local? I guess would be my question. Melanie speaks about our families of color just right here in Long Lake and in Orono and at school. And, those kinds of things that most of the rest of us probably don't know or haven't heard about. So I'd like to flesh that out a little bit as well. We've got some really strong partners internationally with Habitat and Thrivent, and then now Opportunity International. And we try to do, Pastor Adam, we really try to communicate with our community what we're doing, both locally and globally. It's really important to Jill, how she divvies up the financials, and that we're spot on with our communication for those folks who feel like we're not doing enough locally. When in fact, when we always look at our pie chart, we are always amazed how much we do locally. I think, right? And in the past, when we've done our analysis, but that we may not do the best job communicating with our community with what we do locally. And we've gotten, I think we've gotten a lot better at that by listening to our church members and to our community as well, and communicating what it is that we do. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Oh.
Let me just, really quick, I'm just going to share Susan and Sarah. So since I had them both send in information, Sarah said, or Susan said, I think that outreach has not just been about helping in our community and beyond, but also about connecting our congregation to the outreach opportunities. And in doing that, we connect with each other. So that was one part. And then Sarah said, I think the main goal of our outreach committee is to bring opportunities to the Trinity community, opportunities to help outside of our own personal space. It might be faraway lands or just down the street. It's tough for a person to find these opportunities if looking for them on their own. So providing the opportunities, kind of reaching out of our comfort level, and then connecting to as well within the congregation. So sorry. I think Pastor Adam, you were going to say something too.
No, I was just going to respond to the hyper local thing isn't like some official term or anything like that. It mostly is my attempt at explaining exactly what you're talking about, Susie, is the what does local mean? And so I think, local could mean Minneapolis. It could also mean interfaith outreach and community partners. And really, those are great, but those aren't really like local. Like ILCP is local, but they kind of go, they go a lot the other direction. They're in Plymouth and then they kind of go the other direction. And so that's not to say that they aren't helping with things around the area. They definitely are. I'm just saying that there is so the word hyper local is what is how can Trinity be a neighbor to the Long Lake and the Orono community as best as we possibly can be? And that is that's what I'm wondering about. And again, this isn't a question coming from a lack. It's a question for, okay, so now how do we answer this question again? Just asking the question again helps us to refocus ourselves on some of the things that we're doing or some of the things that maybe aren't happening. The just in my conversation with the school, I mean, one of the big needs that comes out of that is, just the achievement gap and the difference between a white student and a student of color, or a wealthy student, or a student who is disadvantaged. So the differences that they see in their students and how it translates into the achievement gap is really huge. And so continuing to provide for the needs of those students and their families so that we can close that gap is big. And so the things that I heard were, come to school in the morning hungry, not having the right clothes to wear when it's winter, that not getting enough sleep at night because they're up with brothers and sisters, or they're not, they're needing to, they've been doing stuff all day and then they need to stay up late to get homework done, those kinds of things. So again, I don't know how we fix those things, but I sure as heck, when I hear them as a need, I want to be a part of helping to be a part of the solution. And I know that there are things that this group's done and that Trinity has done throughout the years, but what are the ways that we can amp up those efforts so that we're helping our like down the street neighbors? So there's nothing fancy about the term hyperlocal. It's just the word I'm using for this very immediate neighborhood. So that we're making sure that we're looking around us and the streets that we're on and the neighborhoods that we live in, and wondering about how we meet the needs, because there are, you all know that. I mean, there are needs in this community. One of the ones that comes up quite often that Jill and I have talked about a lot is, affordable housing. I mean, that's huge, especially as the market for people who are able to buy houses skyrockets. I mean, the gap between that and folks who are looking for an apartment or just someplace to rest their head at night is huge, especially in this area. And we have the tendency in, so I grew up in Plymouth, so I can include myself in this because that's the way that that's the mindset that I think I probably had too often growing up too, is that, well, we live in the suburbs and everybody's got a big house and everybody's doing well and everybody's, and so we create this narrative that everybody, like all of these things about people in these communities. And the truth is it's not everybody. And so we have a tendency to be able to have a little bit of the blinders on to our neighbors who aren't meeting those levels that we talk about. And so that's what I mean by hyper local. Again, I mean, I don't think I made it up, but I'll get the patent for it at some point. But that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Copyright, not patent. So.
Okay.
But
Go ahead.
it plays out in like rings, right? I mean, so we have, and I think you're already doing a really good job of that, it sounds like. But it sounds kind of like a 1 and 2, a local and a global, when, I think you're already doing this, but changing the focus to like rings, right? So we've got this really close hyper local ring, and then we've got a local, and then we've got kind of a state, like a little bit bigger, and a state and a national and a global, that it kind of, how do we, if we were to map out circles on the ground, on the ground, where would we put little dots that represent those, how far we go out, kind of deal. And maybe that would be an exercise to do to really see it on paper.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. And we did that several years ago, but I think it's good it's probably been before we did that spreadsheet, remember, with Kathy, is to look at that again and come back to it as a team, because 3 or 4 years ago, things have changed too, and reevaluate that based on conversation.
Mhm.
And I would just add, Adam, for kind of your perspective, Trinity has done the most of any of our local congregations in support of these families. As the person who ran most of these programs up until just this summer, Trinity was the one church partner that could be depended on.
Mm.
And so, for example, there was money that went to keep individual families from losing housing and ability to partner through weekend to keep people in housing. Trinity has always done a wonderful job helping support our support programs that we have for children at risk, both at the high school and at the elementary level. Now, COVID has made it more difficult. So a lot of our in-person programs, we had a lot of older people that would be mentors. It's been hard. Either the programs were shut down for a while, it was too risky to have people during COVID. So there's a lot of rebuilding of some of that person-to-person work that could be done. So I just want you to know how much Trinity has done. They have been, and again, thanks to Jill, there has been just a solid response when there has been need. And I just really give Trinity just a ton of credit for being there. And a lot of that the congregation doesn't even know. It's been quietly done because it's been, you know, we're a small community and sometimes you don't want to call people out that they were needing help, and Trinity's been there in that quiet way. What I would also tell you is that important voice in the community is sometimes what the families need the most. Several years ago, there was a effort by IOCP to put an affordable housing unit in Long Lake. And unfortunately, the ugliest things I've ever seen in this community came out at that time and stopped this building from being built. And I don't know if you remember, Jill, or anyone else on the group, it was like 45 units, or it would have helped so many families. It would have been supported by IOCP. It would have been a wonderful addition. And we had people, I mean, to the point of saying those people are bringing in disease. And it was so horrific from like shutting down this project. And that's what I mean by being a voice of respect and reason and kindness in the community. That's needed even more than, you know, helping one individual family, because that affordable housing unit would have helped 45 families. And it got shut down by people being that not in my backyard. And this community shut down an eating disorder center that should have been built. Mental health is a huge need in eating disorders, and shut it down because we will not have an eating disorder home in our community. So those bigger picture, I just want you to know that when you try to do some of these things, there is some ugly pushback. And if there was one thing I could change about this community, it's not to let, because it's probably a few people. It's not, most people I think are supportive and really good people, but a few people get really vocal and they shut things down. And I'm just very sad and disappointed that can carry the, you know, that can carry the weight and shut down these projects that are desperately needed. So anyway, I want to give credit to Trinity for the good work that has been done on behalf of the families.
Okay, all
Thanks,
right,
Melanie.
thanks. Let's keep going because we have like 20 more minutes with Pastor Adam, or 20-25 is. The second question was, what do you feel is working well and what is not working? I think you've heard a lot, I think, of working well. Does anyone have anything else to add to that of what is not working well, either way, that you want to add in?
I just want to add one other thing that I think is working well from this team's perspective. And being a fairly new member, and last year having brought forward a new project, that being Can Do Canines, I think the process that the team put in place to learn about new projects and to the information that was gathered, that was shared with the team, and that whole process of looking at new projects was very well thought out and is working well. At least from my perspective as having brought a project to the team. So.
Okay. All right.
That's- So,
Anyone else? Either way? Okay, next question was, if you want to do that, if you were to share with others about Trinity's outreach, how would you complete this sentence? Trinity's outreach ministry is about. In a sentence.
Are people feeling like they already did that one?
Yeah. Do you feel like you, okay.
yep.
All right. Then the last was, there's two more, and then one I want to get to, the one Adam really wants us to dream is, second to last was, how can we tell the story better about the work of outreach to our church community?
And this question comes from one of the first interactions I had with Jill and one of her teams was the Agape Market team. And that was the first question I asked, or I think the first question I asked was, so how well do people know about this, about how much impact this market has on the world? And they were like, well, I mean, I think people know, we probably could do a better job. And so it's a question that comes from a place of, I think we have more of this is what Melanie, I feel like, is talking about with being the voice, but while also doing the work, right? That we can do the work, but we can also tell the story to the congregation, and we can tell a story about the impact that helps other people come along with us on it. And this again was about what Kirk's getting at with the engagement piece, right? And Chuck, you talked about this too, that when we're telling a good story, when we're telling people about the impact, more people will go, oh, I want to be a part of that. Not oh, look at all that good stuff that Trinity is doing. More, we hope, if we're telling a good enough story about the impact, is, oh, how can I be a part of that? So that was the question. And so then I think Agape, I mean, Jill, you did a fantastic job, and your team did a fantastic job of telling the full, complete story of the impact of that this year. And I mean, I got a complete picture of it, and I was just really appreciative of that. So
yeah, we just that was really helpful when Adam did, because we changed our focus too on how we promoted, and saying really that the goal of this, yes, it's bringing everyone together, but that the money's going out. But does everyone know that the money, one of the main goals is to raise money to be able to support both local and global and disaster relief. So we tried to change that. So that was really helpful for when Adam said that.
Yeah, $26,000 doesn't even go into barely goes into our bank account. Just goes in and it goes right back out. I mean, those are the kinds of stories that you tell people, because it doesn't benefit us at all. It just comes in and it goes out. But what a great impact that is on one weekend.
Melanie mentioned earlier the youth and the programs that have been around for the youth to do mission trips. And I personally, having done trips as a youth myself, having been involved, having taken 16, 17-year-olds on international build trips, I wonder if there's a way now that we can reach back to some of those people, those youth who have been involved. And after they've been out of it for 10 years, if there's a story to tell that they can tell, that they could share, about how that trip 10 years ago has impacted and still impacts their life. I think that would be an interesting thought to play around with a bit.
Mhm.
That's it, Kirk. That's a great idea. I agree with you. I also think that, again, in the telling of the story, the testimonies are the best. And Kirk, what you just did, I would love to hear our members hear you say what it was like to bring a new idea to this committee and go through that process. That testimony is powerful. And I think that's another way that we can be more effective.
I also think that, when you're trying to communicate with people, obviously the facts, how much money and numbers are good. And there's some people that really want facts, but I agree. I believe it's the story and it's the recognition of shared values that generally change hearts. Facts seldom change hearts, but connecting at a really value personal level does. I think that's why you've seen all of us that have had some of these experiences. It does change us. It deepens our faith. It changes our commitment. And how do we help more people, both in our congregation and our community, have opportunities for these kinds of heart changing experiences? Because once that happens, that's when you see a difference, both in the person who serves or gives or participates and in the work that we do. So I think we've come a long way. We definitely are doing better with that than we did before, but there's a long way to go. It's a lot of work to tell the story and to do it well and to do it in various means. People now have the shortest attention spans they've ever had. And so you really have to find varied and succinct ways of communicating with people and giving them, a glimpse into these opportunities so that more people do become engaged, which is, obviously been our committee's goal for quite a while and a fit with Trinity's strategic plan.
Melanie, there's another incredible story that we haven't told. And I think of Susie Vickerman and what she does going down to Minneapolis. I mean, there's an incredible story in that. And, that is the best of the best as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think many people know that she does that. I think it's a well-kept secret. That's
We've done so much shifts. I'll just share, just looking at Sarah, I was thinking Sarah and Susan's, which Susan was saying the same thing too, about sharing the stories of hope and love, how the stories are there. We just need to find them, which is what we're all saying. And that generates the excitement. And then, like you said too, about the mission trips and people coming back, and always remember when the high school youth come back from a mission trip or we come back, we're sharing it. And then everyone else gets to hear and see the excitement. And unfortunately, the last couple of years of COVID has made it more challenging, even with like our new global connections with opportunity. We haven't had a chance to travel, but we've shared, we've raised money. So. Anything else on ways of telling the impacting people? And then I think in just inviting people to engagement, sharing your story personally, I'd say. All right, dreaming. Let's dream. We have 10 minutes to dream. Pastor Adam, do you want to, he asked, we did this last week, was it at staff?
Probably 2 weeks ago now.
A couple weeks ago. So do you want to share and let's
Well,
dream a little bit?
Yeah, so these are a couple of things that have come out of the cottage meetings and the We Are Here Now. Two things that I think are going to be of just top importance for Trinity going in this year that's ahead. Engagement, you're already talking about that with on an outreach level, but we just need to re-engage our people, right? That we got to find more ways to just get people together as soon as we're able to do so safely and with as much freedom as we can. That we got to re-engage people. But the second thing that I want us to focus on is dreaming together, and it comes from a little bit of the focus on. We're hitting our 90th year this year, and I think it'd be really cool of us to dream about where we want to be when we turn 100. What are the big dreams that we can have that we may or may not be able to accomplish in 10 years? But I talked about not great timing because the ELCA youth gathering just got canceled, but the director of the ELCA youth gathering prior to this current, well, not current, now gone also. Geez, this is a mess. Anyway, the previous director of the gathering, Heidi Hagstrom, just died. And one of the people who knew her wrote about how he was in a meeting with her when she proposed the idea of all these students at the gathering on one of the days that they're going out into the city and doing a day of service. So I was part of the gathering before, like maybe 15, 20 years ago. And she proposed it, and somebody's like, I don't have any idea how we're going to do that. And she said, I believe in the Holy Spirit. And it became like the quintessential, like the lifeblood of the gathering, to send all these students out into the community. But it was a dream. It was a dream that was thrown out there, and somebody said, well, I don't know how we're going to be able to do that. So I talked about that with staff, to dream about what are the dreams that we have that somebody might go, I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but still a dream. So what, and for an outreach focus, what are the big, audacious, crazy dreams that you have that could possibly be like something that is part of Trinity 10 years from now? When we turn 100, this is what we're about. This is what we've got going.
I can start out and just, I guess my thought from an outreach perspective really needs to go beyond just the outreach perspective, in that I look at all the different committees in the church as being individual parts, but they're all parts of the bigger body. And just like the Bible passage that talks about, the different parts of the body all having to work together and tie together, I know how we are tying together with the Agape team some. I know how we are, in a way, tying together with the youth programs through the mission trips. I think it would be exciting that every single committee, every single group of the church could say how they're tied in with other committees in the church. And as an example, the Snuffle Map program that we did, tying in people from I'm drawing a blank on the name, Joe, you might have to help me, but the community that Susan Rettinger was part of.
Oh, you mean Orono Woods?
Orono Woods, and pulling that into it, pulling the youth into it, with the young families that helped out. And I think having programs that can be leveraged by all different areas of the church, so that we can come together as the body of Trinity and again be able to tell the story of what the body of Trinity has done.
I can jump in with a couple things. I do think that our goals of finding opportunities for people to get engaged with, we've done, I think a really good job having lots of variety from very local to, our area to international. But I think we live in a new era. People have shorter attention spans for information, no matter how much you communicate. They're used to getting things quickly and fast and anytime they want it. Churches, organized religion as a whole is getting less, younger members that join churches. So I think churches have to really figure out how are we engaging people in general. And then when you look at outreach and specifically, wouldn't it be interesting if we could have a way, and it probably is an app or something someone much smarter than I would design, that you could literally say, I want an opportunity to serve locally this weekend. And Trinity would be almost like the clearinghouse for not only our own members, but a kind of a beacon into the community. I think it would be a way to draw even non-church members into Trinity to say, if you're looking for a way to volunteer, they're those, big metro volunteer things, but they're quite impersonal and they're not real local and they don't feel as connected. But imagine if we had a way to connect people so that they could find those opportunities, not only with Trinity, but with vetted groups, whether it's the schools or, it's another organization in the community, so that people would kind of have that one-stop clearinghouse of ways to serve and give and be able to contribute locally. We could almost be the place that pulls that together. It would be an ambitious undertaking, but wouldn't it be exciting? And it would allow those local, those hyper local needs to get filled much more quickly if there was a local opportunity. And then those bigger connections could be made as well. Again, you start with our congregation, but I would advertise it beyond for people that don't really have a church home, but maybe drawn into being with other people that want to be a part of something. And it might just be a way to connect people that just aren't as historically used to just join a church and then figure out what they do, but might be drawn to Trinity because we are the outreach beacon in our community.
Anyone?
I'm what they call an abstract random. Does anybody know what that is? I'm not a concrete sequential. Okay. I think in the bigger, I go back to something that Melanie said earlier, talking about the voice, being the voice in the community. And, and I don't even know how to put form to this, but to me, there's a powerful idea in there that somehow within this community, Trinity could be the voice of sanity and reason and compassion and I have no idea how you do that, but it seems to me that we're not finding that kind of, we're not finding that voice anyplace else. And perhaps doing what you just suggested is a way, Melanie, is a way to become that voice. But that, it would give me hope because I'd like to know that at least in a local community that can happen. Because I'm pretty discouraged about how hard it is to do that on a national level or even an international level. And as everybody, as the politicians will say, if you want to, in this political age, start with your community, start hyper locally, okay?
Chuck, I think one way to do that, which would be very interesting, is that could Trinity partner with other churches who have a similar, and there are some programs out there. There's one called, I think it's the Better Angels, or there's some different processes, and they bring people together and from opposite points of view. You can be very conservative or very liberal. It's not about telling people those point of views, but it's about saying that we will treat each other with civility. We will listen. We will have dialogue. We will go back to those values that I, like Chuck, am just terribly distressed that we've lost those values. And when you hear people, and there isn't a way, so giving an example of the schools, when 200 people show up at a school board meeting to scream and yell and, and really do some awful things, there isn't 200 rational people to say we shouldn't behave this way. We should have appropriate dialogue and not act in an uncivil way. And there isn't a way to find those 200 rational people to counterbalance people that will behave so badly. Similar when you shut down a housing project or other things, does not seem to be a way to rally who I believe are the majority of good people in the community that would speak a voice of reason. And so I don't believe in getting political. I believe in going back to the true values of civility and dialogue and respect and caring, and the things that we all as Christians should be able to believe in common and find those common values. But right now, there is not a leader in our community that is standing up to be that, provide that kind of leadership. And COVID has really taken away some of the opportunities. We used to have all the clergy gather for, like, with the schools once a year for a clergy breakfast and get to meet each other and talk. There used to be an interfaith alliance of our local congregations that would get together and have speakers or have dialogue. And you'd have the Catholics and the Lutherans and the Presbyterians all in the same room. I mean, I went to all of those over 30 years. There was some amazing leadership in the past of congregations coming together and speaking kind of as one, as people of faith. And I just have not heard about that right now happening in our local community. And all I seem to get wind of is the negativity. And I'm just very sad about it. So I agree, if there was a way to be that voice of civility, it's needed and it's time.
I can give you a real quick example of what you're talking about. I love the idea about not just Trinity, but other congregations as well. I'm involved with a group of about 20 people from five different churches that have come together and have provided support for a couple from Dagestan, they're from Russia, with 2 kids who are seeking asylum. And it is the most incredible group of people. I'm absolutely enthralled to be a part of them. And what they've done and come together to take a family and to meet the needs, starting with food, clothing. Shepherd of the Hills over in Hopkins has given them a house. I mean, it is, and they're expanding to Afghanis who are coming in. To me, it's one of the most inspiring stories. And you might have seen a thing on the Afghan, that movement the other night on television. I got chills looking at that, because that's exactly what you're talking. It's not only the voice, it's the actions behind that voice that gives that voice its power. That'd be kind of fun. You up for it, Adam? Come on, let's go.
Up for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone else have dreams? I'm going to share 2. Well, I'll share 2. One ties into what you're, like Adam said, affordable housing. I just feel within the Long Lake, Maple Plain, and Chuck and I have learned a little bit more, and he's continuing on with interfaith outreach. It would be neat if we could be part of some kind of affordable housing project that services within this community. Like I said, Long Lake, Maple Plain, you've got to have access to services too, and bus lines, but I think that would be one thing. The other thing is, you guys are mentioning, and I was just thinking, and Melanie saying we're like kind of the only church that's connected in supporting the schools, is why not get, and like you said, this clergy breakfast, which I haven't been, I think I attended one, maybe, Melanie, years ago, but thinking of the churches that support our local community and schools is getting them together to work together, other than St. George and Calvin, which we do with the community meals and some other things, but there's also the churches in Maple Plain, Woodridge, what could we do to collaborate and work together and also help with a common goal, kind of like what you're saying, Chuck, too, and supporting this family, but let's support our schools together. Let's support being civil and caring and sharing the same message. So I don't. Anything else anyone else has? Anything else from you, Pastor Adam, that you?
No, that's great. Thank you. And don't let this be the end of the dreaming. Continue to think about things and think outside the box and think too big. Because I think, sometimes you think too big. Like I was saying to Jill the other day, when she's talking about affordable housing, well, why don't we build a affordable housing right next door to Trinity, right? Let's build it in our parking lot or something, and that's a stupid, crazy, big idea. But when you got big, crazy ideas like that, then it helps you to focus on what you really are passionate about, and then focus in on the way that you can actually do it, right? And so keep thinking about those big things, things that you think are crazy, and then when you think of them, send them to Jill, and then we'll work on getting those going. We got 10 years. We got lots of time.
Pastor, is it appropriate? Do you have a dream? What do you got sitting in the back of your head?
Oh boy. I don't know. It's going to be too hard of a question for me to answer when I've got so many things. I would like to, on the kind of local thing, I would like for us to figure out how a presence within Long Lake, within Orono. Some of the ideas that were coming from the staff were like getting a building down there and doing ministry out of it, in the community down in Long Lake, something like that, but just to have a more active presence from where we are, but also within. And so I'm wondering what that looks like. Most of the things that I don't have any concrete ones right now, because I've been in kind of listening phase for so long. But when it comes to the dreams that I think I have for Trinity, it is going to be it's going to be going out from our building and trying to figure out how we enter into the public square and how we engage with people where they are, because they're not with us. That we're the minority now. So we have to figure out how we're going to be a part of where people are at. And so, if that's helping build affordable housing, if it's buying a building and running a coffee shop or a brewery or something, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like in Long Lake, but something along the lines of being within the community and going to the people and providing space for some of these core things that we want to be a part of, which is compassion and service and making sure that people feel like they're enough, and like providing a different narrative than the rest of the world. Whatever that looks like, I'm ready to be a part of it.
Mhm.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
Mhm.
Good.
The other thing too, like what we've always done, if we, as our committee takes the message from this meeting of the hyper-local piece, is finding out what our community needs. Is the biggest need affordable housing? And if that's the case, then I'm sure we can get it done. We just need to know that that's what our community needs. You know, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Or if we need 200 people to show up at a school board meeting to help
Yes.
support, we can make it happen. You know, if that is what our community needs, we can make that happen. I'm certain of it. But I think that you know, from everything we've read in the past, like I've said before, is when we find out what the communities need, then we can figure out the resources and the engagement and the mobilization of people to get that done. I don't know if am I thinking correctly there for the rest of the outreach people? Is that how we normally go about things, and everything that we've always read, whether it's El Salvador or Long Lake? I would think that we would approach it the same way, and understanding what the community needs first, and then mobilize our resources toward that, right? That's what we do in El Salvador. That's what we're going to do in Colombia. We never go into a community thinking we know what they need, right? We always ask the people what they need. That's usually
Mhm.
what we've
Yep.
learned.
Yep.
I would imagine that's the same approach we take at Orono Schools or the school board at the Long Lake
Yeah.
community or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Jason Folkerts, our director of CYF Ministries, he tells a story about a church in Arizona or something that went to the local leadership in the city that they were in, and were asking like, what do you need? Like, and the city was like, well, we don't need a sports complex. Some other church did that. They built like this sports complex for the local community, and that was this ministry of this one church. But we do need we're lacking in arts, and we can't fund it this way. And like, all right, we'll take that. So they built a center for the arts that's funded by this church. I mean, so that's exactly right. Is asking the questions and going to the people who know the needs, because we know them, but we also don't know them as intimately as others in our community. Going to people like Melanie and asking about what are the needs, right? That what are the things that you're thinking we're going to need in the next 5 to 10 years, and how can Trinity put our resources and our energy behind that?
Okay.
Okay. Good. All right. We have, thank you all. We will continue the conversation as a team. And like Pastor Adam said, in the meantime, if you have ideas, send them my way, but we'll certainly be spending more time as we continue to dream. And are you okay to stay on to finish with us for a few minutes, Pastor Adam? We have to say the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. Are you good with that?
Oh, I can say the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. It was going to be more than that. I was going to have to bail for bedtime. So let's I'm here for the Lord's Prayer.
Okay, and all we have, everyone, you guys can read the reminders, our book discussion, Be the Bridge, and look at the rest of our notes. But let me share the screen again with our February. Move that down. So how we've done it before is we mute, and then Chuck has helped to lead it, but we're all saying the prayer together. All right.
Okay, estamos listos. Ajá. Here we go. Padre nuestro, que estás en los cielos, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros tu reino, hágase tu voluntad, así en la tierra como en el cielo. El pan nuestro de cada día, dánoslo hoy, y perdónanos nuestros deudas, como también nosotros perdonamos a nuestros deudores. Y no dejes caer en la tentación, mas líbranos del mal, porque tuyo es el reino, el poder y la gloria por siglos de los siglos. Amén.
That was
There you
awesome.
go. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you
And
all.
thanks for
Thanks,
having
Pastor
me.
Adam, for joining us.
That was
Vaya
great.
con
Thank
Dios.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
good insights.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.